I had assumed that this new chapter in my life would begin under more favorable conditions, but now it does. My husband, Kevin, has demolished our family home, leaving me standing in front of an empty place where both of my parents once stood. Here, amidst the ruins of my early years, Kevin startlingly disclosed his actual motivations. "What topic are you discussing? Are you crazy? Bring your inheritance to our house now," he yelled. His direct remarks rendered me mute. Still, as the ridiculousness of the scenario struck me, I couldn't hold back my laughter. "Oh, I see. That's what this whole thing was about," I murmured, shaking my head cynically. My spouse Kevin and his parents stared at me in disbelief, not understanding why I would respond the way I did. I took a moment to reintroduce myself, hoping that would clear things up. Brenda is my name. I'm the modest daughter of a dedicated salaried worker from a lowly beginning. When I was 28, I was married to Kevin, and together we raised 3 amazing kids. Now that I'm 50, I had anticipated a calm existence with my spouse, but circumstances had other ideas. I talked about how difficult it was to care for my sick parents, especially my mother's lengthy battle with cancer. Kevin's support was lacking in spite of the toll it took on me, both emotionally and physically. He frequently bemoaned the hardships of sharing my mother's illness, criticizing everything from the cleaning to the food. In the end, we returned to my parents' house so that my mother could receive better care. Kevin continued to be indifferent to her worsening illness throughout this time, which resulted in her being admitted to the hospital and ultimately passing away. It was distressing to see Kevin act so detached during the funeral arrangements. Even during the funeral, when I really needed his support, he remained distant, choosing to sit in the rear with other distant relatives rather than in the family area with me. I had said to him in a whisper, "I wish you would sit with the family," throughout the service. His response was icy and disengaged. "No, I'm not uncomfortable here. After all, I'm not a blood related," he declared. Hearing us talk, his mother interrupted, saying, "He's your spouse, not your mother's son." Here, Kevin is an outsider. Kevin was detached from his family, and his parents echoed him when they said he shouldn't sit in the family area, even while stories and whispers went around among distant relatives about our tense relationship. They argued that, in spite of the evident stress it created, this commitment to custom was justified. Kevin's parents and my brother's family joined us at my house following the funeral. I remained calm and brought them coffee in spite of their previous insensitivity. But what really got me was their comment about how expensive condolence money is, which made it clear how they really felt about the whole thing. The truth of my new life without my parents, and with a partner who seemed more like a stranger than a spouse, dawned forcibly on me as I stood in the rubble of my boyhood home. I forced a grin and exited the room, watching with heavy heart as I overheard bits and pieces of conversation between Kevin and his parents. They were talking, with a hint of derision, about how hard it was to live with me. It wasn't the first time they had behaved disrespectfully. In fact, it had been a recurring topic in our marriage, made especially difficult by the recent death of my mother and the funeral of my father. When I thought back on these times, I saw how little they had bothered and how much I had put up with. It was terrible to see Kevin's disengagement and even his guilt about the living arrangements I had forced upon him. I heard them laughing behind me, berating me for not allowing them to take my mother's possessions. Kevin and his parents stormed out, labeling me an outsider, when I asked that her mementos be divided among our family members, causing a heated confrontation. Following the event, Kevin took a temporary leave of absence. He surprised me by saying he was worried and by giving me and the kids travel vouchers for a vacation. I was surprised by his abrupt change in attitude, but I was also glad. I asked in jest, I wonder if your father felt guilty, as I took the coupons. Kevin, feeling more laid back than normal, told me to take my time. Yeah, stay at the kids' places if you like, he said, indicating that he intended to relax at his parents' house while I was away. Following his advice, I visited my son Stephen and daughter Susan before the trip. Seeing them during the time I was taking care of my mother had been challenging. To lessen their everyday difficulties, I spent some time preparing and freezing meals for them. Mom, you never get to relax, but thank you. This helps, they both said, appreciative of the home-cooked meals. Thanks to Kevin's unexpected gesture, the trip finally came, and I spent a relaxing time at the hotel with my children. The break seemed to wash away some of the fatigue and sorrow from the months of caregiving and the loss of my parents. After nearly a week, we returned home with renewed spirits and bright smiles. That was fun. We should thank Dad once in a while, Susan suggested, a sentiment that caught me off guard. Really, once in a while? I replied, still unsure about this sudden shift in Kevin's behavior, but willing to acknowledge his effort. This time, I couldn't help but chuckle, albeit with a tinge of suspicion. But I wonder if he's up to something, I said half-jokingly. Susan quickly dismissed my doubts. Don't say that. Your father must have had his reasons, she replied confidently. I smiled, planning to return home, share the wonderful memories with Kevin, and perhaps start afresh in our married life. However, the scene that greeted me upon my return left me speechless. What's going on? The house is. My voice trailed off as I took in the sight of where our family home once stood, now shockingly absent. Then Kevin appeared, his parents smirking behind him, their expressions unnervingly gleeful. Kevin, what's the meaning of this? I demanded, my confusion turning to anger. Kevin, mirroring his parents' unsettling smiles, responded, finally, the baggage is gone. From today, we'll be living with my parents at my house. His words hit me like a cold splash of water. Why are you talking about this? I countered, struggling to maintain my composure against Kevin's arrogant declaration. He coldly continued, lost your mind? Your family home has been demolished. Come to our house with the inheritance already. Everything you inherited belongs to me. The truth was stark and painful. The disappearance of my house was Kevin's doing, all for inheritance. Despite the overwhelming mix of frustration and sadness, I refused to let Kevin manipulate the situation. No way, I thought to myself and burst into laughter at their smug faces. What? Why are you laughing? What a strange woman. Has she gone mad? My mother-in-law muttered, looking at me as if I were a ghost. Facing them squarely, I declared, don't you guys know? I didn't inherit a single penny, so there's no inheritance. My laughter resumed, mocking their greedy assumptions. Kevin, confused and angry, demanded, what do you mean? Explain yourself. But I chose silence. There was no need to enlighten them further. I'm not going to live with strangers. If you want to live together, do it alone, I said firmly, rejecting his proposal outright. My mother-in-law's anger flared. You helped with your parents' household, but you won't do ours, she accused. You know why I did that, right? I agreed to live together, didn't I? But you chose to do so because you didn't want to do housework, I retorted, leaving Kevin and his mother biting their lips in frustration. And demolishing my family home on your own. There are things you can and can't do. I yelled at them, the betrayal cutting deep. Without another word, I left the scene, Kevin's voice trailing after me. Where are you going? But I didn't look back. I needed to secure a place to sleep for the night and couldn't bear to see Kevin's face any longer. Immediately, I consulted a lawyer. It couldn't be that easy to demolish a house, especially ones still in my mother's name. Upon investigation, an unbelievable truth came to light. Kevin and my father-in-law had orchestrated the demolition themselves, utilizing acquaintances from my father-in-law's demolition company and renting heavy machinery. They had even given me the travel vouchers to conveniently get me out of the way. The realization of such deceit brought tears to my eyes and filled me with a profound sense of betrayal. Is there any way to punish the three of them? I asked the lawyer through tears, desperate for justice. The lawyer gave me a reassuring smile as he laid out the legal options. Your husband, who demolished the house registered under your mother's name without permission, can be charged with criminal damage and sued for compensation, he explained. Encouraged, I nodded, and he promptly began the legal proceedings. A few days later, an irate call from Kevin interrupted my thoughts. "What's this letter of demand about?" he demanded. "Oh, you received it. Since you destroyed our important house, you'll have to compensate," I replied calmly, despite my rising anger. "Compensate? I told you we were moving into the family home. I demolished an unused house for you. You should be grateful, not demanding compensation. Just bring your inheritance and come back home," Kevin insisted arrogantly. Grateful for having our home demolished. Really? I scoffed over the phone. And about the inheritance. And coming home. There's none to bring since I didn't inherit anything. I shouted back, my frustration evident. Kevin fell silent, caught off guard by my outburst. The reason I laughed when the house was demolished was because of this. I had a whole year to spend with my mother. It was obvious we would have discussed the inheritance. I told her I don't need anything. Give it all to my brother. Thus, all cash and securities were inherited by my brother. He said that I should get the house since he lived far away and couldn't manage it. If I wasn't going to live there, it could be rented out to someone else. That was the plan for me to inherit the house. Now, either you and your father restore the family home to its original state or pay the amount written in that letter. I'm being kind enough to suggest a settlement. If you can't pay, I'll file a police report and sue you. I spoke firmly. Sorry, I didn't think you'd be so angry, Kevin replied, his tone changing. He began making excuses, suggesting that as long as the family home was there, he couldn't live with his parents, especially since his father had always wanted to live with us. My father-in-law was particularly fond of my son Stephen and had previously expressed a desire to live with him. They had refused to live together back then because it would have made commuting difficult, but his parents seemed to think. I was the one opposed to it. It turns out that Kevin had convinced his parents to agree to this plan by demolishing my family home and making them believe I would move in with the inheritance. This revelation only added to my resolve to see this legal battle through, ensuring that justice was served for the unwarranted destruction of my family home. Even with Kevin's new revelation, forgiveness was far beyond my grasp. Please forgive me. I didn't mean any harm. Dad is remorseful too, Kevin pleaded over the phone. If he's truly remorseful, then he'll agree to the settlement. I responded firmly before hanging up. Despite his continual apologies through calls and messages, insisting he was sorry, I remained steadfast. If you're sorry, then hurry up and transfer the money. I pushed back, knowing well that our beloved family home was beyond restoration, but seeking some form of reparation for the deep hurt caused. In the meantime, I stayed at my brother's place with Susan. My brother, aware of the situation and likely furious about the demolition done without his consent, supported my stance. I won't interfere, but I'll lend a hand. Do what you think is right, Barbara, he encouraged. Everyone around me condemned Kevin's reckless actions and supported me through this ordeal. A month passed with no compensation, and during that time, Kevin ceased all contact. I couldn't impose on Susan's hospitality indefinitely and was eager to secure the promised funds to stabilize my living situation. However, a startling discovery interrupted these plans. One day, Susan, looking at her smartphone, remarked, "This apron looks a lot like Grandma's." She showed me the screen. It was a product page on a flea market app. The item resembled a unique apron I had made for my mother. "What's this?" I asked, shocked. "This is Grandma's apron. I made it, so there's no mistake," I said. Susan scrolled through other listings, and we found nearly 50 items that unmistakably belonged to my mother. It was clear to me that Kevin was behind this. Furious, I called him immediately. "What's this about the app, Kevin?" I demanded. He sounded annoyed and feigned ignorance. "Don't play dumb. You're selling Mom's belongings, aren't you? Cancel the listings right now," I confronted him. Kevin, sounding panicked, denied everything. "What? No, it's not me," he stammered. Undeterred, I retorted, "Who else would do such a thing? I'm coming over to get everything back." Susan and I drove to Kevin's parents' house. Upon arrival, I called out for Kevin, who met us at the entrance, visibly flustered. "I don't know anything about it," he insisted. Susan, supporting me, pressed him for answers. While this was happening, Kevin's parents, likely aware of our presence, came outside. His mother, seeing Susan, greeted her with a smile, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "Susan, you're here," she said cheerfully. Susan, clearly upset, urged her grandmother to tell Dad to tell the truth. "The truth. It seems like Dad is selling the stuff Grandma passed away with," Susan disclosed. Hearing this, my mother-in-law laughed, dismissing the accusation. Kevin looked increasingly troubled, repeating, "It's not me." Then his mother interjected loudly, "Kevin's selling them. That can't be true." The situation escalated quickly as we confronted the tangled web of deceit, hoping to reclaim what was rightfully ours and uncover the truth behind the distressing sales. The revelation from my mother-in-law left me stunned and drained of color. "But I'm the one selling them," she cheerfully admitted, oblivious to the gravity of her actions. Kevin glanced at his mother with a worried look, clearly aware of the brewing storm. Susan, beside me, was equally shocked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What did you say?" I managed to utter, struggling to keep my voice steady. My mother-in-law, undeterred, continued to explain her new hobby with a light-hearted air. "It's quite a task, you know. Packaging has to be done carefully, and the photos need to be taken well," she said, treating the whole ordeal as if it were a fun pastime. She seemed completely unaware that she was handling and selling stolen goods. My frustration boiled over. "Cancel the listing." "That's not something Grandma can just sell," Susan implored, her voice breaking as she tried to reason with her grandmother. But my mother-in-law dismissed her pleas casually. "What's the big deal? I found a fun hobby. I use what I can, and the rest makes a nice little income. It's good for preventing dementia. After all, I'm the only grandma left, and Susan, you want me to stay healthy and live long, right?" she retorted, her tone flippant and dismissive. It was clear she wouldn't listen to our pleas. Realizing that talking would get us nowhere, I took decisive action. "Let's go home, Susan, but first we need to address this properly," I said, pulling a reluctant Susan with me as we left the house and headed straight to the police station. I had not initially planned to involve the police in the house demolition, but theft and unauthorized sale were a different matter entirely. The officers were prompt in their response, and the flea market app company cooperated by suspending my mother-in-law's account, ensuring no more items would be sold. After leaving the police station, I called Kevin. "I had your mother's account suspended. You knew about this, didn't you? You're complicit." Also, I filed a police report. Please cooperate with the investigation, I asserted firmly. Kevin, frantic, tried to plead family ties. We're family, aren't we? Please withdraw it. Stranger, right? I still haven't received any compensation or damages for the house being demolished, and I see no remorse from you. I countered, my anger evident. Despite my frustrations, I wasn't devoid of compassion. Having shared many years with Kevin, I sighed, acknowledging the long and possibly rocky path ahead in resolving these issues. I'll wait for the money, but I won't forgive the theft. Everything must be returned. And Kevin, your father looked very ill. Has he been to the hospital? I inquired, a part of me still concerned for his well-being despite everything. I had seen my father-in-law earlier, and he looked significantly thinner and unwell compared to just a few months ago. It seemed unlikely that the family had even noticed his declining health amidst their other preoccupations. The next day, my father-in-law called not to express gratitude, but to scold me. You're treating me like a sick person, planning to dump me in a hospital to get rid of me. I have to protect Kevin and your mother. I'm not going to any hospital, he protested. His response to my genuine concern stung. I apologize if it was out of line. I was just concerned. I'm not weak and short-lived like your parents. Don't patronize me, he snapped back, his words harsh and dismissive. His reaction only added to the complexity of our already strained relationship, leaving me to navigate these turbulent family dynamics with care and resolve. A few days after our conversation, my father-in-law's health declined significantly, leading him to seek medical attention. The diagnosis was terminal cancer. Kevin, in a state of panic, called me. Dad has terminal cancer. What should I do? He asked, his voice laden with anxiety. I responded coolly, remembering past grievances. That's none of my concern. Remember what you said when I suggested the hospital. You said you're not weak and short-lived like my parents. Deal with it yourself. How can you be so heartless? Kevin retorted. Who's the heartless one? Did you ever say a kind word when my mother was sick? Reflect on your actions. I snapped back and ended the call. Sadly, my father-in-law passed away shortly after. As a human being, I didn't want to harbor resentment towards someone who had passed away. But recalling all that had transpired, I found myself unable to mourn him genuinely. After the funeral, a will was discovered. It detailed that the house would be inherited by my grandson Stephen, and the remainder of the estate was to be divided between Kevin's mother and Kevin. I was surprised to see Stephen named in the will. My father-in-law had always favored him, perhaps hoping Stephen would continue to live in the house despite the inheritance potentially being more of a burden due to taxes and maintenance. Stephen was pleased to inherit the house, although I had concerns. It wasn't my place to interfere. Stephen's inheritance proceeded, and my mother-in-law, delighted, paid the inheritance taxes, claiming it was all worth it for her grandson. Despite my mixed feelings about the situation, I didn't say anything further. Then something unexpected happened. Responding to a message from Kevin, I visited his parents' house. Arriving there, I was met with a shocking sight. Heavy machinery and demolition workers were tearing down the house. It's my house. I can do whatever I want with it, right? Stephen declared, seemingly unbothered by the destruction. Stephen, what are you doing? Stop it right now. I cried out, my heart sinking. Even if I stop now, we can't live there anyway, Mom, Stephen responded calmly. My mother-in-law and Kevin, witnessing the destruction of what was once a significant asset, pleaded with Stephen to stop, but he was resolute. Have you forgotten what Grandpa and Dad did to Mom? Grandma, you were horrible to her too, right? Did you apologize? Stephen's tone was sharp, his earlier calmness replaced by a stern demeanor. His words cut deep, and both Kevin and his mother were visibly shaken, kneeling as the machines loudly continued their work. Witnessing the scene, I felt a complex mix of emotions, but ultimately a sense of relief. It seemed that Stephen, in his way, was settling scores and correcting past wrongs against our family. Later, Kevin, having finally received his inheritance, paid the compensation and damages owed to me. Stephen had also managed to recover the stolen items my mother-in-law took from my mother, ensuring their safe return. "Mom, you've got me and Susan," Stephen reassured. Overwhelmed by the support of my children, I finally allowed myself to shed tears of relief. Kevin and his mother, having lost their house and now, with limited resources, moved back into company housing, and their fortunes dramatically reversed. Our greatest asset persisted throughout, and that was the link between Stephen and Susan, which provided love and support to each other, even in the face of hardship. Kevin's mother and him were now the talk of the town. I was contacted by the wife of one of Kevin's coworkers, with whom I am close, following their move back into company housing. Sincerely, I told her the whole backstory. They would have to be thrifty about where they lived in the future, what with Kevin's impending retirement. Although living in corporate housing may not be comfortable for them, they created the circumstance. I occasionally considered asking friends, more out of curiosity and wanting to have a story to tell than anything else, for updates on Kevin and his mother. I kept living with Susan in the interim, but things were about to change. Thanks to the sale of the property where his parents' house formerly stood, Stephen was in a much better financial position and had plans to get married and start a new family. The money from the land had proved to be unexpectedly large, making the house that was torn down shockingly advantageous. Stephen had extended a cordial invitation to move in with him. "Mom, come live with us," and his soon-to-be wife had enthusiastically joined him. Though I knew I couldn't live with Susan forever, I accepted their offer with gratitude. I was resolved to be a mother-in-law who supported and cared for her family without going overboard. I was excited to start a new chapter in my life, one that would be full of love and respect for my growing family.
My name is Freya, and I'm about to turn 25 this year. I've been happily married for 4 years, and my son, William, just celebrated his 4th birthday. When I first got married, I worked full-time, but now I balance part-time work at the same company. My husband, Henry, is 27 years older than me. Our relationship started with Henry being the one to pursue me passionately, but after we got married, I noticed a shift in his attitude, where he became more controlling. Henry has a sister, Aria, who is 23 years old. There's a bit of an age gap between them, and it seems that Henry tends to spoil her a little. Before we got married, I didn't mind Aria visiting often. I thought it was just a normal sibling bond, and I assumed they got along well. But after we tied the knot, I started noticing some changes in Aria's behavior. She began showing up at our place without calling first, expecting to be treated like a guest without ever offering to help or show any appreciation. What bothered me more was Freya's response. Instead of addressing the situation with Aria, he would expect me to accommodate her every time. Aria would come in, barely acknowledging me, and just casually say to Henry, "Hey, I'm here again," like it was completely normal. Even though I wasn't prepared to host another guest, I ended up serving dinner to her. Henry, instead of understanding the situation, would blame me out loud, saying I should have been more considerate. Aria would apologize, but it was clear she enjoyed Henry's favoritism. After dinner, while Henry and Aria sat chatting on the sofa, I was left with the leftovers. I had to make my own meal, and they didn't even acknowledge me or William. It felt like we were just there to serve them, not treated as family. One evening, as I was about to take a bath with William, Henry loudly interrupted, asking me to go buy a cake for Aria, even though it was already late. Aria insisted she wanted it right away, and Henry blamed me for the delay. Feeling pressured, I reluctantly agreed to go to the cake shop with William. As we walked, I overheard them criticizing me, calling me inconsiderate, and questioning why Henry even married me. Although William didn't understand the conversation, he could feel the tension between Henry and me. Trying to keep things light, I asked him what kind of cake he wanted, and he happily responded that he wanted one with lots of fruit. Our trip to the cake shop was full of cake talk, which for a moment helped me forget about the negative things Henry had said earlier. We made it to the shop just before closing time and managed to find the cake Arya wanted. We also bought the fruit cake that William had asked for. When we got home, I served the cakes to Henry and Arya, and then I made William's cake and took it to the dining room. The moment I placed his cake in front of him, Arya pointed at it and said she wanted that one. Before I could say anything, Henry moved William's cake in front of Arya, ignoring William's protests. Henry justified his action by saying he had paid for the cakes with his own money, so he had the right to choose for William. I couldn't hold my feelings in anymore. I told Henry how unfair it was, and in response, he threatened divorce. William, who had stopped crying, nervously grabbed my hand. After a moment, he said, "Mom, I also like cake with strawberries on it." It's really good, as he ate the cake Arya had wanted. Seeing that William was going through so much, I decided to take him away from the situation. I moved him to another room, so he could enjoy his cake peacefully. Henry apologized to Arya, saying he was sorry for being so stingy, but I held back, not wanting to argue in front of William. Watching William enjoy his cake, so happy and innocent, brought me some comfort. After we finished the cakes, we decided to take a late bath and sleep in William's bed. The next morning, when I was preparing breakfast, I realized Arya had already left. But soon, I heard William crying. To my shock, I found that his piggy bank, a gift from my father, had been broken and all the money he had saved was gone. William, who always said goodnight to his piggy bank, was heartbroken. When I asked Henry about it, he casually explained that Arya needed some money, so she had taken it from the piggy bank. Holding my crying, shaking son, I felt his pain so deeply that I couldn't help but cry with him. It hurt to see how much Henry was focused on taking care of his sister, Arya, over our own son. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I was angry and sad, so I confronted Henry, breaking my usual habit of staying silent during arguments, especially in front of William. Without saying a word, Henry walked into the bedroom and returned holding something shocking: divorce papers. I was stunned to find that Henry had been secretly hiding divorce papers, something I had no idea about. In an outburst, he shoved the papers at me and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. William, who had never cried about the issues between Henry and Arya before, seemed to have reached his breaking point. He cried non-stop since last night, and it broke my heart to see him like this. Feeling the weight of the situation, I suggested that we skip daycare for the day. To my surprise, William happily agreed, with a faint smile on his face. We spent the day together playing and bonding. William brought a picture book from the shelf, climbed onto my lap, and happily pointed to the teacher in the book, saying, "Mama, right? He looks like an angel." His little heart seemed full of patience, and in that moment, I decided to make the day special. I took a day off from work, despite the possible trouble it might cause at my job. My workplace understood the situation and kindly granted me the day off. We spent the morning at the park, playing hide and seek, having fun in the sandbox, and sliding down the slides. When we got back home for lunch, William looked sleepy. Normally, he would nap on his own, but today he fell asleep in my lap, just like when he was a baby. I had planned to use the time to do some household chores, but today felt different. Instead of cleaning, I decided to enjoy the peaceful moment and let myself be healed by the sight of William's calm, sleeping face and gentle breathing. Just as I was settling into this serene moment, I heard a noise from the front entrance. The door had opened, and since it wasn't the usual time for Henry to come home, I became suspicious. I quickly hid in the bedroom closet, holding William tightly. A voice echoed through the house, and to my surprise, it was Arya. I listened as she moved through the house, sounding frustrated as she searched for something. After a while, she made a phone call, mentioning Henry and talking about their failed search. I could hear her locking the front door as she left. Once I felt it was safe, I put William back to bed and sat down to think about what had just happened. I couldn't understand why Arya had entered our house, or what they had been looking for. Suddenly, Henry felt like a stranger to me, and I was filled with disgust and fear. Quickly, I packed some essentials for William and me and headed to the train station. We took a train to my parents' house, which was, thankfully, just 2 stations away. Although I hadn't contacted them beforehand, they could tell something was wrong just by looking at my face. They welcomed us without asking questions. Once we were settled, I told my parents everything about Henry, Arya, and the strange things that had been happening. I explained how I didn't feel safe staying at our house anymore. My mother suggested that Arya might have been searching for my belongings, possibly cash cards. As I thought about it, I recalled my past experience as a successful CEO in the handmade goods industry. When I got married, I handed over the business to trusted friends so I could focus on raising my child. Though I still worked part-time and kept in touch with the company, Henry had no idea that I was still the CEO. I remembered the divorce papers Henry had hidden, and I began to suspect that he thought I had a decent amount of savings. Although I had told him that I still received some money from the company, I had kept the details of my savings and my role as CEO private. Over time, I realized that Henry struggles with managing money and tends to spend all that he earns. Early in our marriage, Henry only gave me $200 a month for food, and even suggested that I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. But with the financial strain of raising William and barely having enough for food, I never agreed to stay home. Eventually, Henry reluctantly allowed me to work part-time. To keep him from asking for more money, I signed a post-marital property waiver through a lawyer, and since William was born, I've used my savings to cover his nursery fees and buy him clothes. Even though I only received $200 for food, I never asked Henry for more money. He must have assumed I had savings, especially considering Arya's apparent need for money. I also thought they might have been looking for my cash cards. I have a separate savings account for William, into which a portion of my salary is deposited every month. But I always carry my valuables with me, so they won't find anything if they were searching for it. What was even more troubling was the idea that Arya might be coming into our house when we weren't there, and Henry might be letting her. My father suggested that I store my valuables, including the cash cards, in their safe for now. As I thought about their need for money, William came over to my father, crying over his broken piggy bank and the promise he had made to save money. My father, furious about what had happened to William's piggy bank, vowed to call Henry. My mother suggested that I try to figure out what Henry and Arya were after. She pointed out that Henry might try to shift the blame to us, making the divorce more favorable for him. I decided to act calmly and find out what their true intentions were. I planned to secretly record their conversation. My father's lawyer friend also offered to help. When we returned home, I started cooking dinner while keeping my phone screen down, ready to record. It wasn't long before Henry arrived home, and to my surprise, he immediately asked about my cash cards. When I asked him about it, he gave vague answers, clearly trying to deceive me. When I remained silent, Henry grew more agitated. He demanded that I give him all of my part-time earnings for his sister. I refused and calmly explained that the money was for William's savings. In response, Henry angrily shoved the signed divorce papers toward me, declaring that I was living off his money and didn't need to save for William. He even said something that made my heart drop. He valued Arya more than our own son. Hearing this, I couldn't continue preparing the meal. I stopped, put the divorce papers in my bag, took William's hand, and walked toward the door. Henry shouted loudly, stating his serious intent for the divorce and ordering me never to come back. I responded firmly, telling him I wouldn't return to a house where a stranger could come and go freely. Once we left, Henry bombarded me with messages and calls, which I ignored. I turned off my phone and sought refuge at my parents' house. I shared the recording of our conversation and the divorce papers with them. Although I had no love or affection left for Henry, I couldn't stop worrying about how this would affect William. My parents understood my concerns and advised me to do what I felt was best. They acknowledged that a divorce could be emotionally hard on William, but they also supported my decision. As I was grappling with the decision, William told me he was hungry. My mother, seeing the distress on my face, kindly made hamburgers, his favorite dish. Overcome with emotions, tears welled up in my eyes as my mother lovingly told William that the hamburgers were made so that he and I could visit her whenever we wanted. William eagerly took a bite and joyfully exclaimed, "Grand's hamburgers. I want to eat these every day." I smiled and said, "It's because the hamburgers are filled with the love I have for you." Then, in a sweet gesture, William took a big bite of his hamburger and offered it to me. His kindness broke me, and even though I tried to stop my tears, they kept flowing. Noticing my tears, my father reassured William that they were tears of happiness, not sadness. William, in a moment of understanding, hugged me, and my father's eyes turned bright red. I realized how blessed we were to be together as a family. I looked at William and remarked, "Family is precious." Surprised, William asked, "Did Dad say that only Arya is family?" My father gently confirmed it but then asked, "Would you like to live with us as family?" With a joyful laugh, William eagerly agreed, which made everyone smile. Despite still grappling with the idea of divorce, the meal was so warm and filled with love that I finally decided to part ways with Henry. I planned to tell William about it, even though my heart felt heavy. Yet somehow, I sensed that William already understood, even without me saying a word. The situation gradually settled, and William, in his innocence, expressed a desire to live as a family. He even embraced our pet dog, affectionately calling him his younger brother, despite the dog being older than him. His sweet gesture lightened the mood, and it felt like a small moment of joy amidst the turmoil. With my decision made, preparations for the divorce began in earnest. I contacted a lawyer who was a friend of my father's, and together, we started formalizing the contract. The next day, we signed the necessary papers, and while I took in the weight of what was happening, my father and William shared comforting laughter in the other room. They were trying to lift my spirits, but I was still processing everything. As I lay in bed that night, I found myself reminiscing about my childhood, when life was simpler, and I never imagined I'd be facing such a complicated, painful decision. The following day, I checked my smartphone and found over 200 missed calls and messages from Henry. His emotional instability was evident in every message. I felt exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained, and I decided to turn off my phone to avoid hearing more. With the lawyer's help, we explained everything to my parents. We shared how Arya had accumulated a significant amount of debt due to her casino habits and shopping addiction, and how Henry had acted as her guarantor. It was becoming clearer why he had been acting so erratically. They had been planning to use my savings to cover Arya's debts, and it explained so much about his recent behavior. The lawyer confirmed that the divorce papers had already been submitted. Henry was devastated when he realized it was final, and I could hear him sobbing on the other end of the phone. It was strange, his tears didn't move me. After everything that had happened, I couldn't find it in me to feel sorry for him. Despite the expectation of disagreements over child support, Henry agreed to sign a pledge to pay $340 every month for William's care. It was an amount that barely covered the essentials, but it was a small victory. Later, I received another call from Henry. His tone was different this time. There was no aggression. Instead, he calmly admitted to having manipulated me financially and explained his complex feelings toward Arya. He acknowledged his mistakes, but said nothing that could change my mind. I firmly stated that I had made my decision and wouldn't reconsider. I could hear his faint sobbing on the other end before he wished me happiness and hung up. I didn't even respond. As the call ended, I stayed strong, feeling a sense of resolve that I hadn't felt in months. I discussed my future plans with my parents. After much thought, I decided to stay with them until William grew up, giving us both the stability we needed. I resumed my role as the company president, something I had put on hold when Henry and I got married. I was determined to rebuild my life, not just for me, but for William as well. As time went on, I learned that Henry and Arya had informed their parents about the divorce and the mounting debts. The news was so shocking that it led to their disownment. For Henry, it was the final straw. His own family turned their back on him, leaving him to deal with the consequences of his actions. Looking back now, I find happiness in being with my family. We have our ups and downs, of course, but we have each other. I've come to realize that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who truly care, who lift you up when you're at your lowest, and who help you see the light at the end of the tunnel. I have William, my parents, and my own strength to carry me forward. In the end, that's what truly matters.
I decided to file for divorce. My husband stormed out of the house, leaving behind our 3-year-old twins after his harsh words. And our newborn daughter. I had a hunch for some time that he was cheating, but between childcare and work, I had no energy to confront him. I can't do this anymore. Just then, one of the twins clung to me, saying, "Mommy, we love you." My beloved children looked up at me with worried faces. Despite my anger towards my husband, something clicked in me at that moment. I thought, well, I'll just file for divorce. I immediately signed the papers with a smirk. He doesn't realize how much I've been supporting him. Unknowingly, he had begun his descent into hell. Late again. How many times have I heard that? My name is Jennifer, and I'm 34. We got married 4 years ago, and he's 2 years younger than me, which led me to spoil him at first. The following year, we had twin girls, and 3 years later, another daughter. His return home started getting extremely late around the time our youngest was born. I hope the third one is a boy. I've always dreamed of playing catch with him. He was excited during the pregnancy, but his attitude soured as soon as he found out it was another girl. At the hospital, he grimaced when he saw our newborn daughter. "She doesn't look like me. She's not cute," he said. At that moment, intense anger welled up inside me. How could he say his own child wasn't cute? Maybe he was already considering divorce by then. Even after I came home from the hospital, his sulkiness continued. He barely helped with child care. "Show a little interest in the kids," I told him. "If you're short on hands, hire a babysitter or something. You've got savings from your job." I worked at a top-tier company, earning significantly more than most women my age. On the other hand, my husband struggled to keep a job, often quitting before I even noticed. Perhaps he was envious of my success. At the time, he was doing temporary work with no certainty of how long it would last. I didn't expect financial support from him, but I wished he'd at least fulfill his role as a father. Spend time with the kids at night, at least. But his response was always, "What a hassle." When I asked him to help, he reluctantly did it, but so half-heartedly that the girls were bored. He seemed to notice their indifference, which he didn't like, leading to a terrible cycle. Eventually, he stopped helping altogether. "I'm tired from work. Let me rest on the weekends," he'd say. So on weekends, he either stayed in his room or went out. "I have to work this holiday. If you don't watch the kids, I have plans too." "See you," he'd say, leaving without listening. I couldn't leave the kids alone, so I often had to scramble for a last-minute babysitter. If things continued this way, it would surely destroy our marriage and negatively affect our children. So, I decided to talk to my in-laws. The next day, I visited them. That's just how husbands are. A wife needs to be patient, they said. More importantly, could you do that thing we talked about last time? My concerns were ignored, and they asked for favors instead. My parents lived far away, so it was hard to meet them, and I felt guilty even calling. I didn't know who to turn to. "Hey, make dinner," my husband said, greeting me in pajamas when I got home that evening. The house was a mess, and the kids, bored with their toys, smiled when they saw me. "Where have you been all this time?" he asked. "I had to stop by the in-laws for a bit," I replied. "Hurry up and make dinner." "I'm starving," he said. "If you've been home all day, couldn't you do some laundry or clean the bathroom?" I asked, frustrated. He snorted in amusement. I decided not to do anything for someone who didn't appreciate it. What do you mean? I cleaned the bathroom yesterday, and you didn't thank me. Didn't I say thank you? I asked. Not that. I mean like at least $100, he said, stretching out his hand, asking for money. What was he talking about? I pulled him aside so the kids wouldn't hear and retorted, I'm working, doing the chores, raising the kids, all of it, and you've never helped me. That's a wife's job, he shot back. Then what's your job? I work too, I said, knowing full well he barely earned $1,000 a month and did nothing around the house. Our argument lasted for an hour, until our daughter interrupted, Mommy, I'm hungry. My husband stormed off, but I ignored him and rushed to prepare dinner. During those tense days, I discovered something devastating. My husband was cheating. I confided in a college friend who had divorced due to her husband's affairs. She advised me to gather evidence immediately. In truth, I had suspected the affair for some time, just before our youngest was born. He came home one day wearing a new perfume. When I casually asked him about it, he broke into a sweat and stuttered. His late nights, increasing silence, and cold attitude toward the children were all red flags. The final straw came when I found a lipstick in his jacket pocket. It's mine. My lips get chapped, he said, trying to brush it off. You're using Chanel's pink lipstick? I asked. Maybe it's my mom's, he muttered. That night, I noticed a hickey on his neck, partially hidden by his shirt collar. I was about to confront him, but instead, I decided to gather evidence first. Take your time warming up, I said with a smile, pretending I hadn't seen anything. The next day, after a late shift, I came home to find my daughters asleep and the house eerily quiet. In the dining room, my husband stood under the soft glow of the light, holding a piece of paper. I can't take this anymore. Let's get a divorce. What? Just file for divorce. I don't want the kids. Without waiting for my response, he handed me the divorce papers and left. Mommy. The sound of the door closing woke up the twins, who looked at me with worried expressions. It's okay. Sorry for waking you, I told my daughters, trying to comfort them, but inside, it clearly wasn't okay. He's reached his limit, that's my line. And what did he mean he doesn't want the kids? Mixed emotions swirled in my head, and I hadn't even noticed the tears streaming down my face. Mommy, we love you, the twins said, sensing something was wrong, and they hugged me tightly. At that moment, I came to my senses. I can't go on like this. I can't worry these little girls. I realized that as long as I have my children, I'm happy, and this is what I should have done from the start. Well, I'll just file it, I said with a weary look on my face. My daughter smiled, and we all slept soundly that night. The next day, I filed the divorce papers first thing in the morning and called a certain person. Yes, please go ahead with it. It's my husband who will have trouble, I said, my voice steady. The person on the phone listened to my story and took action. This was something I had considered before. If my husband betrayed me, I would end everything we had been doing. If that ruined his life, it was none of my business. 3 days later, I came home from work and found my in-laws and husband waiting for me. My mother-in-law was furious, my father-in-law looked pale, and my husband seemed clueless, dragged along without understanding the situation. Have you been waiting at the front door all this time? That's kind of creepy, I remarked. This is no time for that. What is this? My mother-in-law thrust a letter at me. It's a notice from a lawyer. I can see that much, I said calmly, as her face turned tomato red in anger. I need to pick up my daughters, so excuse me. Ignoring their protests, I walked inside, but my furious in-laws followed me into the living room, insisting on a discussion. Why would you suddenly send this? I don't understand, my mother-in-law shouted. You would understand if you read the letter, wouldn't you? I replied. Using a lawyer. How cowardly, she snapped, despite her son being in the wrong. Her outrage was something else, mixed with irritation and confusion. Finally, my husband, who seemed to understand nothing, spoke up. Are you upset because I divorced you? Filing some kind of complaint. His parents looked at him, dumbfounded. Of course, he had no idea what I had done for them all these years. Wait, what? I didn't hear about any divorce. Is that why this is happening? My father-in-law asked, shocked. Such a useless son. My husband, still clueless, looked confused. What are you two so anxious for? You've ruined everything. Wait, what are we even talking about? He asked, as the conversation between them went nowhere. My mother-in-law slammed the table. Why did you divorce Jennifer? She demanded. My husband clammed up, uncomfortable under the pressure. Since the conversation was going nowhere, I decided to answer for him. He completely failed to fulfill his duties as a husband and father. There you go again. I told you, that's just how men are, my mother-in-law said dismissively. Right, so you would forgive your husband if he had an affair? I asked. My mother-in-law froze, clearly not expecting to hear that her son had been unfaithful. My husband tried to interject, but a sharp glare from me shut him up. Then, oddly, my father-in-law started defending his son. A man's affair is just a fling. It's not a problem. This is pointless. Please leave. Any further communication will need to go through my lawyer, I said firmly. So, what are you talking to a lawyer for now? You agreed to the divorce, right? My husband asked, confused, still clueless about the gravity of the situation. Agreeing. I filed for divorce straight away. Then what is all this about? He asked, growing agitated. While arguing with my husband, my mother-in-law suddenly started crying loudly. Paying $56,000 in one lump sum is impossible. Wait, what large sum? What are you talking about? Who's paying whom? My husband asked, even more confused. Finally, the moment had come. It was time for my husband to regret everything. I proudly revealed what I had kept hidden until now. Right after we got married 4 years ago, I was called to my in-laws' house alone. My mother-in-law said she had a serious matter to discuss. Nervous because she was his mother, I was prepared to help. However, I was completely unprepared for the shocking words that came out of her mouth. I need $60,000, she said, leaving me utterly confused. As I hesitated, she bluntly asked about my salary. Unable to withstand the pressure, I admitted it was over $100,000, and her eyes lit up. Apparently, my father-in-law had gotten into horse racing, losing large amounts without ever winning and accumulating significant debt. Desperate to cover his losses, she pleaded with me for the $60,000, promising to pay it back. Feeling cornered, I couldn't say no. She repeatedly assured me that she would repay the money, but after 4 years, I had only received $4,000 back. There were times when she made small repayments, only to borrow again. Realizing that if I didn't take action, I might never recover the full amount, I hired a lawyer and filed a lump sum claim for the remaining $56,000. When my husband heard this, his jaw dropped, and I almost laughed. But we said we'd pay you back little by little. Why suddenly in full? He asked, incredulous. We're no longer family, so I thought I shouldn't hold back, I replied coolly. At this, my mother-in-law, with a screech like a banshee, turned her fury toward my husband. It's your fault for cheating, so you should be the one to pay it back. Huh? Why should I? We're not working anymore, and our pension won't cover it, he stammered. If you want me to live in your parents' house, You'll do what I say, she demanded. There was no way he could repay $56,000 in one lump sum, especially since he was unemployed at the time. I'll live at Brian's place, so I won't pay, he said nonchalantly. That's the name of your affair partner? I asked, growing more absurd by the second as I listened to their family quarrel. It was time to deliver the final blow. Don't think it ends with $56,000. I'm demanding $20,000 each from you and your affair partner as compensation, plus child support, of course. What? That's not fair. I didn't cheat, he protested. Had you forgotten so quickly about loudly declaring you'd live with Brian? I said, sighing as I handed him a pile of photos I had prepared for this very moment. Looking at these makes me sick, I added. The photos were from his social media, showing him kissing and embracing his affair partner, evidence that my lawyer confirmed would hold up in court. Why do you have these? My husband asked, panic creeping into his voice. A quick online search brought up your social media. It's amazing you thought it wouldn't be found, I said. My naive husband had been posting cheerful photos on a public setting, completely unaware of how visible they were. Even my in-laws gaped at him, dumbfounded. Please leave now. It's time to take the girls to daycare, I said firmly. At least don't demand compensation from Brian. What if she runs away? My husband pleaded. That's not my problem, I replied coldly. With no resolution in sight, I forcefully kicked them out of the house. Open the door. Help me. I didn't know about the debt. I could hear my husband yelling through the door for a while. I'm calling the police. I shouted, and the three of them eventually shrugged and left. A year has passed since then. After paying me the compensation, the affair partner disappeared, leaving my ex-husband to deal with the fallout. He now lives with his parents, who incessantly demand he cover the remaining $56,000. To make matters worse, he ended up borrowing from shady lenders. While he managed to pay off some of the debt quickly, he still owes $20,000 in compensation for the affair, plus $500 a month in child support. Now, he earns a daily wage doing manual labor from morning till night. The interest on his debt continues to balloon, and it's unlikely he'll ever pay it off in his lifetime, but that's none of my business. Mommy, we're going to be late, my daughters called out, pulling me out of my thoughts. Oops, it's time to take them to daycare. They're growing up healthy and strong, and that's all the happiness I need.
I've been sleeping with your best friend. Asher's words cut through me like a knife, shattering the illusion of our perfect life together. I stare at him, my heart pounding in my chest as the weight of his confession settles over me. 5 years of marriage, countless memories, and a friendship I cherished above all else, all tainted by this single moment of betrayal. Natalie, my closest confidant, the person I trusted with my deepest secrets, had been lying to me for God knows how long. Asher's face is a mask of cold indifference as he watches me process his words. I want a divorce, Evelyn. It's over. Anger, hot and fierce, surges through my veins. How could you do this to me, to us? We had a life together, Asher. We had plans, dreams. He scoffs, shaking his head. Plans, dreams. You've been so focused on your career, Evelyn, that you've forgotten what it means to be a wife. I needed more than a roommate who occasionally shares my bed. His words sting, but I refuse to let him see how deeply they cut. And Natalie? How long has this been going on behind my back? Asher has the decency to look away, a flicker of shame crossing his features. A year. It started as a friendship, but it grew into something more. Something real. I laugh, a harsh, bitter sound that echoes in the stillness of our living room. Real? You call sneaking around, lying to your wife, and betraying your vows real? What about our marriage, Asher? Was that not real enough for you? He sighs, running a hand through his hair. I didn't plan for this to happen, Evelyn. But Natalie, she understands me in a way you never could. She supports my dreams, my ambitions. She doesn't make me feel guilty for wanting more out of life. And that's worth throwing away everything we've built together? our home, our future? I can feel the hot sting of tears behind my eyes, but I blink them back, refusing to let him see me crumble. Asher looks at me, his expression a mix of pity and resignation. I'm sorry, Evelyn, but I can't live a lie anymore. I want a divorce, and I'm going to start a new life with Natalie. The finality in his words hits me like a physical blow. In an instant, my world has been turned upside down. Everything I thought I knew, revealed as nothing more than a carefully constructed facade. As Asher turns to leave, I call out, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. This isn't over, Asher. I won't let you walk away from our marriage without a fight. You and Natalie will pay for what you've done. He pauses, his hand on the doorknob, and looks back at me. Do what you need to do, Evelyn, but it won't change the fact that I've made my choice. I'm sorry it had to end this way. With that, he's gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click. I sink to the floor, my legs no longer able to support me, as the tears I've been holding back finally break free. In the silence of our once shared home, I make a vow to myself. I will uncover the truth behind their betrayal, and I will make them regret the day they chose to deceive me. I confront Asher, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. You blame me for your infidelity? How dare you, Asher? We both had demanding careers, but I never once considered betraying our vows. Asher's eyes narrow, his voice dripping with condescension. You were always too busy, Evelyn, too focused on your own success to notice that our marriage was crumbling. Natalie was there for me when you weren't. I supported your career, your ambitions. We made decisions together, Asher. We agreed to wait on starting a family until we were both ready. My voice rises, frustration and hurt bleeding into every word. A cruel smile plays on Asher's lips. Well, I'm ready now. Natalie's pregnant, and I'm going to marry her. We're going to have the family I always wanted, the family you were too selfish to give me. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, stealing the air from my lungs. Pregnant? You got her pregnant while we were still married? How could you be so reckless, so irresponsible? Asher shrugs, his indifference a sharp contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. It happened, Evelyn, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Natalie and I are building a future together, and I won't let you stand in our way. I clench my fists, my nails digging into my palms. You're a liar and a cheat, Asher. You've betrayed me in the worst possible way. And for what? A woman who was willing to sleep with her best friend's husband? What kind of future can you possibly hope to build on a foundation of deceit? He steps closer, his eyes cold and unfeeling. The kind of future I deserve, Evelyn. One where I'm not constantly being held back by a wife who can't see beyond her own ambitions. Natalie understands me, supports me in ways you never could. And you think that justifies your actions? You think that gives you the right to destroy our marriage, to shatter the trust I placed in you? My voice cracks, the weight of his betrayal threatening to crush me. Asher's face hardens, his words laced with venom. I'm done living a lie, Evelyn. I'm done pretending to be happy in a marriage that's been dead for years. You can have your divorce, but don't expect me to go down without a fight. I'll make sure you regret ever trying to stand in the way of my happiness. Happiness? I laugh, a bitter, broken sound. You think you'll find happiness with a woman who betrays her best friend? You're delusional, Asher, and I promise you this. I will uncover every lie, every secret, every dirty little detail of your affair. I'll make sure the world sees you for the monster you really are. He smirks, unfazed by my threats. Do your worst, Evelyn. But remember, I'm not the only one with secrets. You're not as perfect as you'd like everyone to believe. With that, he turns and walks away, leaving me standing alone in the ruins of our once happy life. I watch him go, my heart hardening with each step he takes. I will not let him win. I will not let him destroy me. I will fight back with every ounce of strength I possess, and I will make sure he pays for his betrayal. As I stand there, the pieces of my shattered world littering the ground at my feet, I make a silent vow to myself. I will uncover the truth, no matter the cost. I will expose Asher and Natalie for the liars they are, and I will rebuild my life on my own terms. The price of their deception will be high, and I will make sure they pay it in full. I sit across from the private investigator, his face a mask of professional detachment, as he slides a manila envelope across the table. This is what I've managed to uncover so far, Mrs. Callahan. It seems your husband has been quite generous with his mistress. I open the envelope with trembling hands, my eyes widening as I flip through the photographs and financial statements. Asher, my loving husband, had been funneling money into Natalie's bank account for months, paying for her rent, her art supplies, her lavish lifestyle. How long has this been going on? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. The investigator leans back in his chair, his eyes filled with a mixture of pity and understanding. From what I can tell, the payment started about 6 months ago, right around the time your husband started spending more late nights at the office. I nod, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Asher's sudden distance, his increasingly cold demeanor, all signs I had foolishly ignored in my desire to believe in the sanctity of our marriage. Thank you, I say, sliding the envelope back across the table. I appreciate your discretion in this matter. He nods, rising from his seat. Of course, Mrs. Callahan. If there's anything else I can do to assist you, please don't hesitate to call. I leave the investigator's office, my mind reeling with the evidence of Asher's betrayal. But I know confronting him directly will only lead to more lies, more denials. No, I need to go straight to the source. I need to speak with Natalie. I find her at her studio, her once vibrant paintings now twisted and dark, reflecting the turmoil of her own guilty conscience. She looks up as I enter, her eyes widening in surprise and fear. "Evelyn, what are you doing here?" she asks, her voice trembling. I hold up the envelope, my eyes hard and unforgiving. "I know about the money, Natalie. I know Asher's been supporting you, paying for your life while he was still married to me." She pales, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. I can't explain, Evelyn. It's not what you think." "Really?" I laugh, a harsh, bitter sound, because it looks like my husband has been having an affair with my best friend, all while lying to my face and pretending to be the perfect devoted spouse. Natalie's eyes fill with tears, her voice breaking as she speaks. "He promised me, Evelyn. He said he was going to leave you, that we were going to start a life together. He said he loved me." I shake my head, my heart hardening with each word she speaks. "And you believed him? You thought he would actually leave his wife, his successful career, for a struggling artist who can't even support herself?" She flinches at my words, her shoulders sagging in defeat. "I know it was wrong, Evelyn. I never meant to hurt you. But Asher, he made me feel special, wanted. He said he needed me in ways you could never understand." "Needed you?" I scoff, my anger rising with each passing moment. "He needed a mistress, Natalie, someone to stroke his ego and make him feel like a man, but he never intended to leave me. He never intended to start a family with you." Her eyes widen, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. "But the baby, he said he wanted this child, that we were going to be a family." I laugh, a sound devoid of any humor. "Asher doesn't want children, Natalie. He made that clear to me from the start. He only wants what he can't have, and once he gets it, he loses interest. You're nothing more than a conquest to him, a way to prove his own virility." She crumples then, her sobs echoing off the walls of the studio. I watch her, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction in her pain. She brought this upon herself, and now she must face the consequences. "I hope it was worth it, Natalie," I say, my voice cold and unfeeling. "I hope the price of your betrayal was worth the momentary thrill of being Asher's mistress. Because now, you'll have to live with the knowledge that you destroyed our friendship, our trust, for a man who never truly loved you." With that, I turn and walk away, leaving her to drown in her own tears and regrets. I have the evidence I need, the proof of Asher's lies and deceit, and I will use it to make sure he pays for every moment of pain he has caused me. I step into the sleek, modern office of Liam Hastings, the renowned divorce attorney known for his ruthless tactics and unparalleled success rate. He rises from behind his desk, his hand outstretched in greeting. "Mrs. Callahan, a pleasure to meet you," he says, his voice smooth and confident. "I've heard great things about your work as a lawyer. It's a shame we're meeting under such unfortunate circumstances." I take his hand, my grip firm and unyielding. "Please, call me Evelyn, and thank you for agreeing to take on my case. I need someone who isn't afraid to play hardball." Liam smiles, a glint of something dangerous in his eyes. "I assure you, Evelyn, I'm not in the business of playing nice. When my clients come to me, they expect results, and I deliver. We sit and I slide the manila envelope across his desk. This is what my private investigator uncovered. Proof of my husband's infidelity and financial support of his mistress. Liam flips through the documents, his brow furrowed in concentration. This is good, Evelyn. Very good. With this evidence, we can paint a picture of a man who not only betrayed his marriage vows, but also his financial responsibilities. I nod, my heart racing with the thrill of impending revenge. There's more. I've uncovered evidence that Asher has been embezzling funds from our joint accounts, funneling the money into Natalie's bank account. Liam's eyes widen, a slow smile spreading across his face. Embezzlement? Oh, this is going to be fun. We'll nail him to the wall, Evelyn. He won't know what hit him. We spend the next few hours poring over the evidence, strategizing our next moves. Liam is brilliant, his mind working in ways I never could have imagined. He sees angles I never considered, finds loopholes and technicalities that will work in our favor. As we work, I find myself drawn to him, to his intensity and his passion for justice. He understands the pain of betrayal, the anger that comes with being wronged by someone you trusted, and in that understanding I find a kindred spirit. You know, Evelyn, he says, leaning back in his chair, I've seen a lot of cases like yours over the years. Spouses who cheat, who lie, who think they can get away with anything. But you're different. You're a fighter. You're not going to let him win. I smile, feeling a warmth spread through my chest at his words. Damn right, I'm not. Asher thinks he can just walk away, start a new life with his mistress, and leave me to pick up the pieces. But he has no idea what's coming for him. Liam reaches across the desk, his hand covering mine. We'll make him pay, Evelyn. Together. He'll regret the day he ever thought he could betray you and get away with it. I look into his eyes, seeing the fire and determination that mirrors my own. In that moment, I know I've found more than just a lawyer. I've found a partner, someone who will stand by my side and fight for what's right. Let's do this, I say, my voice steady and strong. Let's take him down. Liam grins, a wicked gleam in his eye. With pleasure, Evelyn, with pleasure. As we continue to work, the hours ticking by in a blur of strategy and planning, I feel a sense of power coursing through my veins. Asher thought he could break me, thought he could shatter my world and leave me helpless. But he underestimated me. He underestimated the depths of my rage, the strength of my resolve. And now, with Liam by my side, I will make him pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment of pain he has inflicted upon me. The price of his deception will be high, and I will collect every penny. I stand before Asher, my eyes blazing with the fury of 1,000 suns. In my hands, I clutch the evidence of his deceit. It's the proof of his betrayal. He looks at me, his face a mask of arrogance and disdain. What do you want, Evelyn? He sneers, his voice dripping with contempt. I thought I made myself clear. We're done. I'm starting a new life with Natalie. I laugh, a cold, mirthless sound that echoes through the room. Oh, you're done, all right, Asher, but not in the way you think. I toss the papers onto the table between us, watching as his eyes widen in recognition. You thought you could hide your lies, your embezzlement, your sordid little affair, but you were wrong. I have proof of everything, Asher, every penny you stole, every promise you broke. He reaches for the papers, his hands trembling. This is nonsense, Evelyn. You can't prove anything. Can't I? I smirk, reveling in his discomfort. I have bank statements, credit card receipts, emails, and text messages. I have a private investigator who has been tracking your every move, and I have a team of lawyers who are ready to take you down. Asher's face pales, his bravado crumbling before my eyes. What do you want, Evelyn? Money? The house? I'll give you whatever you want, just don't do this. I lean forward, my eyes locked on his. What I want, Asher, is justice. I want you to pay for what you've done, for the pain you've caused. I want you to suffer, just like I have suffered. He shakes his head, his voice desperate. Please, Evelyn, think about what you're doing. Think about our marriage, our life together. Our marriage? I scoff, my anger rising with each passing second. You destroyed our marriage the moment you decided to stick your dick in my best friend. You threw away our life together the moment you chose her over me. Asher's eyes narrow, his voice growing cold. You're making a mistake, Evelyn. If you go through with this, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll drag your name through the mud. I'll make sure everyone knows what a vindictive bitch you really are. I laugh, a sound full of bitter triumph. Go ahead, Asher. Do your worst. But know this, I have the truth on my side. I have the evidence of your lies and your betrayal. And I will use it to destroy you, just like you destroyed me. He stares at me, his eyes full of hatred and fear. You'll never win, Evelyn. I'll fight you every step of the way. I smile, a cold, cruel twist of my lips. Bring it on, Asher. I'm ready for war. With that, I turn and walk away, my head held high. I feel a sense of power coursing through my veins, a sense of purpose that I haven't felt in years. Asher thought he could break me, thought he could shatter my world and leave me helpless. But he was wrong. I am stronger than he ever imagined, and I will not rest until he has paid for his crimes. I will not rest until he has felt the full of my vengeance. As I step out into the bright sunlight, I feel a sense of hope blooming in my chest. I have a long road ahead of me, a battle that will test me in ways I never imagined. But I am ready. I am ready to fight, to claw my way back from the brink of despair and emerge victorious. Asher and Natalie may have started this war, but I will be the one to finish it. And when the dust settles, they will know the true price of their deception. The shrill ring of my phone pierces the silence of my apartment. I glance at the screen, my heart skipping a beat as I see Natalie's name flashing across the display. I hesitate for a moment, wondering what fresh hell she has in store for me, before answering with a curt, "What do you want?" "Evelyn, please," she sobs, her voice thick with tears. "I need your help. The baby, she's not Asher's." I feel a rush of vindictive pleasure at her words, a sense of poetic justice that leaves me breathless. Well, I purr, my voice dripping with malice. It seems the tables have turned, haven't they, Natalie? She's quiet for a moment, her sniffles the only sound on the line. "I know I don't deserve your help, Evelyn. I know what I did was unforgivable, but please, I have nowhere else to turn. Asher, he abandoned us. He said he wants nothing to do with me or the baby." I lean back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. "And why should I help you, Natalie? After everything you've done, after all the pain you've caused, why should I lift a finger to help you?" "Because I have information," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Information that could help you destroy Asher. I'll tell you everything, Evelyn, every dirty secret, every lie he's ever told. Just please, help me. Help my baby." I'm silent for a long moment, weighing my options. On the one hand, the thought of helping Natalie, of showing her even an ounce of mercy, makes my stomach churn with disgust. But on the other hand, the promise of more ammunition against Asher, of more weapons to use in my war against him, is too tempting to resist. "Fine," I say, my voice cold and hard. "I'll help you, Natalie, but not for you, for your child, and in exchange you'll give me everything you have on Asher, every last scrap of dirt, every skeleton in his closet. Do we have a deal?" She's quiet for a moment, her breathing ragged. "Yes," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "We have a deal." I hang up the phone, my mind racing with the possibilities. With Natalie's testimony, with the evidence she can provide, I can bring Asher to his knees. I can make him pay for every moment of pain he's caused, every lie he's ever told. But first, I need to make sure Natalie holds up her end of the bargain. I need to make sure she's truly on my side, that she's not just using me for her own gain. I pick up the phone again, dialing Liam's number. He answers on the first ring, his voice warm and comforting. "Evelyn, what's up?" "Natalie called," I say, my voice steady and strong. "She wants my help. Says the baby isn't Asher's and he's abandoned them." Liam is quiet for a moment, his mind working through the implications. "This could be big, Evelyn. If Natalie's telling the truth, if she has evidence against Asher, it could be the final nail in his coffin." "I know," I say, my heart racing with the thrill of impending victory. "But I need to make sure she's not playing me. I need to make sure she's truly on our side." "Leave that to me," Liam says, his voice full of confidence. "I'll dig into her background, make sure she's not hiding anything, and if she is, we'll use it against her. We'll make sure she has no choice but to cooperate." I smile, feeling a rush of gratitude for Liam's unwavering support. "Thank you, Liam. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll never have to find out," he says, his voice soft and tender. "I'm here for you, Evelyn, always." As I hang up the phone, I feel a sense of hope blooming in my chest. With Natalie's testimony, with Liam by my side, I can finally bring Asher to justice. I can finally make him pay for every moment of pain he's caused. And when the dust settles, when the war is won, I will emerge victorious. I will emerge stronger, wiser, and more powerful than ever before. Liam and I sit side by side, poring over the evidence we've gathered against Asher. Bank statements, phone records, emails, and texts, all painting a picture of a man consumed by his own greed and selfishness. "This is good, Evelyn," Liam says, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "With Natalie's testimony and the evidence we've uncovered, we can bring Asher down. We can expose him for the fraud he really is." I nod, my heart racing with the thrill of impending victory. "I want to see him suffer, Liam. I want to see him lose everything, just like he made me lose everything." Liam takes my hand, his touch warm and comforting. "We'll make sure he pays, Evelyn. We'll make sure he never hurts anyone else ever again." We work tirelessly, building our case against Asher. We reach out to his colleagues, his patients, anyone who might have information about his unethical behavior. And with each new piece of evidence, each new testimony, our case grows stronger. Finally, the day of reckoning arrives. We stand before the medical board, our evidence laid out in damning detail. Asher sits across from us, his face pale and drawn, his eyes filled with fear. "Dr. Asher Callahan," the board chairman begins, his voice grave. "The evidence against you is overwhelming. You have violated the trust of your patients, your colleagues, and your profession. You have engaged in unethical behavior, financial misconduct, and adultery. What do you have to say for yourself?" Asher opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. He looks at me, his eyes pleading for mercy, but I have none to give. "You destroyed my life, Asher," I say, my voice cold and hard. "You betrayed me, lied to me, and made me question everything I ever believed in. And now you will pay the price for your actions." The board deliberates for only a few minutes before reaching their decision. "Dr. Asher Callahan," the chairman says, his voice ringing with finality. "It is the decision of this board to revoke your medical license, effective immediately. You are hereby barred from practicing medicine in the state of New York, and your name will be added to the National Registry of Disciplined Physicians. May God have mercy on your soul." Asher crumples in his seat, his face buried in his hands. I feel a rush of triumph, a sense of vindication that leaves me breathless. I have won. I have destroyed the man who destroyed me. As we leave the hearing, Liam takes my hand, his eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Evelyn. You brought him to justice." I nod, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "I couldn't have done it without you, Liam. You've been my rock through all of this." He smiles, his hand tightening around mine. "I'll always be here for you, Evelyn, no matter what." We walk out into the bright sunlight, ready to face the world together. Natalie is waiting for us, her baby cradled in her arms. She looks at me, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Evelyn," she says, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for helping me, for giving me a second chance." I nod, feeling a sense of kinship with the woman who was once my enemy. "We all deserve a second chance, Natalie, even you." As we walk away, I feel a sense of hope blooming in my chest. The past few months have been a nightmare, a hell I never thought I'd escape. But now, with Asher's downfall and Liam by my side, I know that anything is possible. I have emerged from the darkness, stronger and more powerful than ever before, and I know that whatever the future holds, I will face it with my head held high, ready to take on the world.
Things have changed since Lily was born. I used to see Mark's face light up when I walked into a room. Now I'm lucky if I get a grunt before he buries his nose back into his phone. His job's the same, maybe even less stressful than before, but something in him switched off the day we brought her home. Another painting, Grace. What's that? The third this week. Mark's voice would grip the air, sharp and smearing whenever he watched me set up my easel. He used to admire my work, even had my best piece framed in his office once. Not anymore. "Yeah, so it's not like I'm spending your money?" I'd answer, trying not to let him see the tremble in my hands, keeping my focus on mixing the blues and yellows on my palette. But inside, each word he volley felt like a punch. "Could have fooled me, and look at this place. Looks like a damn tornado hit it," He'd scan the room, his eyes scanning every toy and blanket out of place, holding them up like evidence of my failures. "Look, I'm with Lily all day, and she's a handful," I fight back, my voice not as steady as I'd like. "And maybe if you helped a little around here." "Help with what? You're home all the time. You deal with it. That was our deal, remember? I make the cash, you handle the rest. Not my fault you can't manage," he cut me off, leaving no room for argument. Every night ended the same, with him turning away and dismissing me with a scoff when he left for work. Lily would tug at the hem of my shirt, her little eyes confused. "Daddy mad?" she would ask, her tiny lips quivering at the thought. "No, baby, Daddy just has a lot on his mind. Here, help Mommy choose the colors." I pull her into my arms, trying to smile for her sake, guiding her hand to pick out colors together. Together we paint, and for a while, the bitterness in Mark's tone would get drowned out by her laughter and our shared world of color. I knew my paintings were good, not because I was full of myself, but because they were the only thing I had left from a time when I felt confident and vibrant. That evening, when Mark came home, I did what I always did. I tried to greet him with a warm dinner, a clean house, and Lily squeaky from her bath and dressed in her best pajamas. "Hey," I said, the smell of roast chicken trailing behind me. "How was your day?" He grunted in reply, shrugging off his coat and throwing it over the couch. His eyes caught mine, then the easel set up in the corner of our living room. "Still haven't gotten rid of that junk, huh?" he commented. "It's not junk, Mark. I'm working on something," I responded, weariness seeping through. "Looks like a waste of time and money. You could be doing something productive, you know." He walked past me to the fridge, not waiting for an answer. Productive seemed to mean anything that made money or made his life easier. I wasn't doing either to his liking. "I am doing something," I said, my voice firmer now. "I'm raising our daughter and keeping her home, and I'm trying to hang on to something that matters to me. My painting matters to me, Mark." He didn't even pause, just popped open a beer and drank deeply. "Call it what you want, Grace. To me, looks like you're just filling time, making a mess I'll have to pay someone to clean up." I felt the sting, not from the unkindness of the words. I was getting used to that, but from the dismissal of my dreams, my passion. There wasn't a place for them in Mark's world anymore. "Dinner's ready," I called out in what felt like a weekly performance, standing with quivering hands as I served the meal. Mark's parents, seated like judges at the head of the table, barely noticed my effort to create a warm, hearty meal. Their eyes were fixed on the easel by the window. "What's this, then?" Mark's dad, George, a broad man with a voice that filled the room, jabbed a finger towards my unfinished painting. "Oh, that's just something Grace has been fooling around with," Mark chuckled, waving a dismissive hand before taking his seat. "Real high-class stuff, right?" Laughter rang out, and it twitched at my nerves. Laughter that didn't reach their eyes. My, we're an artist now, aren't we?" chimed in Mark's mom, Patricia, her voice a kind of sharp that could slice steel. "Why don't you show us your latest masterpiece, dear?" George bellowed, his smile more of a challenge than a gesture of interest. I stood rooted to the spot, feeling the flush spread up my neck. "It's not done yet," I muttered, but Mark was already striding over to the canvas, grabbing it with less care than he'd take with a dish towel. "Look at this, folks," Mark laughed, flipping the canvas around like he was on Wheel of Fortune, revealing a letter. "It's supposed to be a landscape. Can you believe it?" George's laughter bloomed loud again. "Looks like a blind dog's nightmare," Patricia tutted, shaking her head, her nostrils flaring with each. "Toril, why waste your time with this hobby? Get a job or do something, anything pro-do." "I've as if any place would hire her," Mark snorted, setting the painting back with a thud that made my heart sink. "The job market's tough out there, and well, look at her." I swallowed hard, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "I do plenty. I take care of Lily in this house, and my words faltered under their collective stare. Patricia poked at the food with her fork as if she suspected it was poisoned. Taking care of your family is the least you can do, she sniffed. But honestly, Mark, if you'd married someone with a little ambition. They went on tearing strips off me with every word while I just stood there. The room closed in, their words pressing on my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. I felt myself slipping away, becoming smaller, insignificant in this grand performance of theirs. Something in me snapped as soon as the meal ended. With a fake in my voice, I excused myself, marched up the stairs without looking back, and locked myself in the bedroom. Grace, Mark's voice, climbed up the stairs maybe half an hour later, cracking through the door. "You coming back down? We need to clear the table." I didn't respond. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, a scream or a sob would have come out, and I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of hearing my break. I scrolled through my bank app, a frown etching deeper lines on my face. Our account was looking dire again this month, and the grocery list wasn't getting any shorter. Lily needed new shoes, too. She was sprouting like a weed. Mark's voice tumbled in from the living room. "Grace, why is there a charge for $48.95 for Martin's art supplies?" "Just picked up a few things," I said, tapping through the app to transfer what remained of my personal savings to cover it. I needed them. "Come on, Grace, that's money we could have put towards something important, isn't it?" His voice was flat, bored, even with a hint of something else. Was it disappointment, frustration? I sighed. "Art is important to me, Mark, the same way your golf is important to you." I didn't mention the fact that his golf clubs cost more than a year's worth of my supplies. "Yeah, but golf is networking. It's part of my job." "What does your painting get us?" "A cluttered house and wasted cash," he said, grumbling. "It gets me through the day," I murmured, feeling that old familiar tug of war in my chest. Mark snorted. "Through the day. We have to be smart about money, not just spend it on whatever gets us through the day." Budget. Grace. Budget. That word felt like a choke chain. "I pay for my art supplies with my own money, Mark, the money I had before." I trailed off, not wanting another fight. My before was a long-gone chapter, one that contained a job, independence, and a once-shared dream of my own gallery. "Your money's our money, isn't it?" He shot back, the insinuation that my financial independence was history clear in his tone. "And that your money is running out fast? What then?" Later at the store, I chose the cheaper brands, counting every cent, every compromise. Eyes met with the rest. I bought the smallest tubes of paint, the ones I could slip into the cart without raising eyebrows. Back home, I unpacked the bags with robotic precision, every item a testament to our tightrope walk above financial ruin. "Putting back some luxuries, are we?" Mark commented, his gaze landing on the no-name cereal and store-brand pasta. "Yes, tightening the belt," I answered without looking at him, hiding the receipts, a paper trail of my crimes. He hummed, rummaging through the bags like an investigator looking for a slip-up. "Where are the Greek yogurts you like? And isn't this the cheap coffee?" I shrugged, busying myself with placing a can of tomatoes in the pantry. Prices went up, had to make some cuts. "Don't see any cuts in your art budget, though," he said, a cold finger pointing out the new brushes I'd slipped under a loaf of bread. I turned to him, meeting his eyes for the first time since the conversation began. "This keeps me sane, Mark. My art keeps me sane." My voice was firm, and I clenched my fist around the countertop to stop the shake in my hand. "Well, sanity's quite the luxury item these days, eh?" He nodded towards the brushes, his words deliberate, biting. That night I painted not out of passion but frustration. Each stroke was a challenge, a cut from our personal budget to fit it within the constraints of Mark's expectations. But as I worked, I remembered a time when these brushes were a joy to hold, not a weapon. I had to defend. Mark was somewhere across the country, tangled up in business trip meetings when he decided to drop the latest task on me. His voice buzzed through my phone, sounding like he was already out the door before he even finished his sentence. "Grace, you've got to pull together a birthday present for my boss's wife, Clara. Her big day's in a week. Okay, do you have any cash set aside for that?" I asked, squinting at our already tight budget on my laptop screen. "Nah, you figure it out. Just make it look like we put some thought into it," he muttered, sounding distracted. "Hang on, you want something nice, but I'm supposed to magic up the funds for it." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. "You always find a way. Make it happen, Grace." And with that cheery little line, he was gone. I let out a long, slow breath, closing my eyes and trying to push back the frustration gnawing at my last nerve. I didn't have the cash, but I needed something that would knock Clara's socks off. No pressure, right? After a deep dive into Clara's online world, it was clear she had a thing for art. Her feed was full of gallery visits, pictures of canvases that probably cost more than our car. She even had photos with artists, talked about supporting the arts, patronage, and all that jazz. An idea sparked, and I grabbed it before it could blaze out of my mind, a painting from me. I had the paints, I had the canvas, and I sure as hell had the motive. I'd give Clara something no one else could, not off some high street. I spun the idea in my mind, letting it settle. I could picture the brushstrokes already, feel the drag of bristles against canvas. It would be personal and it'd be free. Bonus, a painting. Decision made. I was going to need every minute of every day if it was going to look anything like the kind of stuff Clara posted. I pulled out my old easel, set it up in the living room, and got to work. All the while, fingers crossed that my little slice of creativity would cut it in the high-stakes world of business birthday gifts. Day 1 postmark bombshell. I'm standing in the middle of my makeshift studio, a corner of the dining room I've cleared out, pushing the table against the wall. The morning light is streaming in, kind of highlighting the chaos of my art supplies spread all over. "Mommy, what's all this?" Lily, my 6-year-old, parks herself right in the middle of the chaos, her eyes as round as the splattered paint drops on the floor. "Mommy's got to make a birthday present, baby," I reply, rifling through old brushes with bristles stiffer than my back feels. For goose, she picks up a brush, examining the crusty edges like a pro. "For a lady Daddy works with," I explain, snatching the brush from her before it becomes a makeshift sword or fairy wand. Lily's forehead scrunches up in confusion. "But why can't Daddy buy something?" "Lily, go watch your cartoons, will you? I need to think." I'm not in the mood to unpack the complexities of our bank account or my marriage to a kindergartner. Grumbling something under her breath, sounding too much like me for comfort, she trots off to the living room, leaving me to my quandary. The week grinds by. I'm pulling double shifts, daytime mommy, nighttime Picasso. The canvas starts to fill, taking on a life of its own. Something abstract, something that feels kind of like the whirlwind that's my life lately. I don't hear a peep from Mark. No check-in calls, not even a text asking how it's going. Guess he's too wrapped up in his charts and deals, and whatever he does that's too important to ring his wife. Lily, on the other hand, is my tiny shadow, always creeping back to watch me paint. "You're really good, Mommy," she says on like what, day 4? "You should draw stuff more." I smile because that's probably the best review I'll ever get. Think so, huh? Maybe I will. The night before the big reveal, the painting's finally staring back at me, done. It's not just art, it's everything I haven't been able to say or do, all poured out onto canvas. I can't sleep that night, tossing and turning, thoughts swirling in my head. What if Clara hates it? What if Mark thinks I've wasted my time? What if? But the morning comes, clear and bright. The painting's wrapped up, no fancy paper, just brown parcel stuff, but neat. A nice bow from Lily's hair ribbons, because why not? So there I was at the boss's wife's birthday bash, my arms wrapped tight around a package, the painting I hoped would be a hit. I slid through the crowd, eyes low, wishing I could blend into the wallpaper. Mark was there too, just flown in hot from his latest trip, looking every inch the man who had it all, except the picture-perfect trophy wife. His eyes swept over the women, polished and perfect in their cocktail dresses, then landed on me like a ton of bricks. I saw that look on his face, like he just bit into a lemon. He looked me up and down and shook his head just enough so only I'd notice. The room faded a bit, like someone turned down the volume on the party, and all I could hear was my heartbeat in my ears. Then his gaze zeroed in on the parcel, all wrapped up and nestled in my shaky grip. His eyes flashed, and oh boy, I knew that look. I saw the storm brewing before the first word even shot out. "What's that?" He spat, barely keeping a lid on it. I pulled the package closer, as if I could shield it and me from what was coming. "It's a gift, my painting." The words barely had a chance to hang in the air before his voice boomed. "A painting? You're kidding, right?" It was loud enough to catch a few glances our way. I tried to shush him with my eyes, but he was past caring. "You actually think this is okay?" To hand her a piece of amateur hour? The whispers around us started like the start of a rain, soft but getting stronger. "Mark, please, not here," I begged, my cheeks flaming up something fierce. "Did you lose your mind?" He roared, and the room didn't just pause. It froze. "You make us look like fools." By now we were the main event. Eyes flicked to us, then away, then back again like they were watching tennis. I shrank, wished I could melt right into the floorboards. His face was a shade of red I'd only ever seen on traffic lights. "Great, just great," Grace, he vented, throwing his hands up. "You don't think, do you?" The heat in my face told me I was blushing, and not in a cute way. My hand shook, but I hugged the painting tighter, because what else was there to hang on to? I took a breath, tried to remember why I thought this was a good idea. "Now everyone's going to have a go at us thanks to you and your dumb idea," he added, sharp as a knife for anyone still pretending they weren't listening. My mouth opened, words ready to tumble out to defend, or maybe just to tell him to put a sock in it. But what was there to say with the whole room's eyes burning holes into us? Instead, I just stood there, the foe he called me, wishing the ground would do me a favor and swallow me whole. The laughter after Mark's outburst felt like daggers. Even with the room spinning, I caught the boss's eye. He was just watching, all quiet, with something like confusion on his face. And his wife, Clara, she had this half-concerned, half-intrigued frown that actually gave me a sliver of hope. Clara waved a hand, cutting through the noise. "Quiet down, everyone. Let's see what Grace has brought." I moved on autopilot, my hands still a bit jittery as they tore the paper from the canvas. The art kind of just spilled out into the room, all the colors and the shapes I'd spent nights pouring myself into. Clara's eyebrows shot up. "Oh my," she said, and the room hushed like they were waiting for her to drop the hammer. But then she continued, "This is quite something, Grace." Mark was still fuming by my side. "Yeah, something, all right." I ignored him and searched Clara's face for some sign. It's for you," I mumbled. "Happy birthday." She tilted her head, studying the painting like it was a puzzle. "It's bold." "I like bold, don't you, darling?" She nudged her husband, pulling him into this. The boss was a tough guy to read, but he nodded. "Don't see something like that every day." Mark tried to jump back in. "Oh, come on, you're saying you like this mess." And there it was, the snap in Clara's voice as she turned to him with a squint. "Mark, I'd watch it if I were you. Your wife has talent, and I won't have you embarrass her any further. It's unbecoming." The room fell into this tense kind of quiet, the kind where you could hear someone sneeze 3 houses down. "Look at the colors, the feeling in it," Clara was saying now. It's got life. Mark tried for a save. Well, sure, if you like that sort of thing. But Clara cut him off. I do, it's decided. This goes right. In the foyer. I blinked. Was this actually happening? You sure, babe? The boss chimed in. It's not exactly. Clara shot him a look, and he trailed off. Standard, right, it's unique. Her arm shot out to me, a beacon in the high heels and overpriced suit. See, thank you, Grace. This here's a real gift, folks. It's got soul. And just like that, the murmur started up again, but they had a different tune. People were nodding, some even looking at me with what felt like respect. Clara, still holding my painting like it was a treasure, turned her eyes on me again. So, Grace, she said, drawing the room's focus, ever thought about showing your work? Like in a gallery? Mark let out a scoff. I heard it, but my eyes were glued to Clara. Nah, who'd want to see my stuff? I don't worry, Grace. I would, and I know people. Clara's voice was firm, her eyes sharp. Mark tried to laugh it off. Come on, Clara. She's just dabbling. Clara quirked an eyebrow at him. So she dabbles better than some pros I know. What's it to you? I swallowed, feeling like I was teetering on the edge of something big. I don't know. I've never. What's to know? You jump in. I'll help, right? Clara's look said she wasn't asking. She was telling. A giggle slipped from me. It was nervous, a bit wild-sounding, even to my own ears. Sure, right. Clara beamed. Good, it's settled then. After that, whispers flitted around like moths to a flame. People who barely gave me the time of day were now hanging on my arm, talking about my work. It felt surreal, like walking through someone else's life. Mark was suddenly there again, his hand on my back almost scalding. You're not serious about this, are you? There was that edge in his voice, like a knife threatening to cut. I turned to him, feeling the weight of the crowd, the pull of something new. Yeah, I am. My voice was stronger than it had felt in years. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time that night. But what about us? What about us, Mark? I repeated. We've been over for a longer time than I want to admit. That shook him. He stepped back. I thought we were fine. I turned to face him fully. You thought wrong. The words were colder than I intended, but they needed to be said. Mark ran a hand through his hair, looking beaten. So what? We just end it. I looked down at the colors splashed across the nails on my fingers, at the rings that didn't mean what they were supposed to anymore. We ended it a long time ago. Now we're just making it official. He didn't have anything to say to that. I watched him walk away, his shoulders hunched. Clara's hand touched my shoulder. You okay, Han? I nodded. I am, thanks to you, she winked. What are friends for, right? And you, Grace, she paused, giving my shoulder a squeeze. You're going to light up this town with your art. Just you wait. And with that, I felt my heart start to hammer for a whole new set of reasons. Ahead of me, there wasn't just an ending. There was a beginning, and it was painted in the boldest colors I could imagine. Lily and I, we'd be more than fine. We'd be us, unapologetically, unfalteringly us.